Hi, I'm Zibby Owens, and I am the host of this podcast, Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. I am also a newly minted USA Today bestselling author of the novel Blank. I've created a whole community of book lovers around this podcast, a publishing company, reading retreats, a bookstore, and more. Learn more at zibbymedia.com or follow me on social at Zibby Owens or join the community at Zibby Readers. Chris Whitaker is the author of All the Colors of the Dark. Chris is the award-winning author of Tall Oaks, All the Wicked Girls, and the New York Times bestseller We Begin at the End, which we discussed originally on this podcast. Chris lives in the UK, and he will be at Zibby's Bookshop. So go to zibbysbookshop.com so you can find the schedule and come see him. Welcome, Chris. Thanks so much for coming back on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books to discuss All the Colors of the Dark. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I can't believe it's been like 3 years since the last one. 4 years, something like that. Yeah. Well, it came out in the UK 4 years ago, so I think like 3 years ago in the US, which is mad, isn't it? You were my first ever US event I ever did. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well, you've come so far. Look at what...
Yeah, I have. I feel like I've aged like 10 years. So.
I actually can't believe that it's been that long. My sense of time these days is totally warped. I look up and all these people I interviewed in the beginning have new books. It's crazy. It's just crazy.
Yeah, that's because you're the busiest person I think I've ever met in my whole life. I don't know, how you do it.
I need to slow it down because time is too fast. Time is going too fast. Okay, All the Colors of the Dark. Tell listeners what it's about, please.
I'll give you the kind of top line pitch, which was my few line pitch that I gave to my publisher years ago before I wrote it. And the book is about two abducted teenagers that fall in love in the pitch black basement they're being held in, having never seen each other. The boy escapes and then can't find his way back to the girl. And the police don't believe that she's real. They think that because he was trapped down there for so long because of the trauma that he kind of conjured this girl out of his mind. And but he truly believes in his heart that she's real. And what follows is this big epic 27-year search for the girl, for the missing girl, the love of his life, and also for the person that took them. Yeah, so it's a big crime sweeping love story.
It is.
That was a complete nightmare to write.
Yeah, tell me about the writing.
It was really tough. So We Begin at the End was my last book, and I'd started writing this before that came out. So I was doing PR for that, and COVID happened. So it was like a complete nightmare. And we, at the time, I bought a house and taken the roof off the house, and then COVID hit, and then so we couldn't get builders or anything to finish. So it was just raining into the house, and I was trying to write this book, and I was working at the library at the time because I was working 3 jobs. I wasn't a full-time author back then because my first 2 books didn't sell that well. And then We Begin at the End changed everything, but I was still working 3 jobs. So I was at the library, I was doing research for this book, doing PR for We Begin at the End. And because of the time difference, UK, US, I was doing 2 a.m. events every night. I think I did 100 events and book clubs and things. So it was like an endurance test. But I did love it. Everyone was so nice. But this time round, no COVID, so I get to come over for a tour, which is very exciting.
Very exciting. Yeah, I feel like when we talked last, you had never been to the places you were about, right?
No, I'd been to the US twice. I went to Miami when I was 21 and Florida again when I was a kid for Disney World. But coming to New York when I saw you, that was the first time I'd been in 20 years. Or something, and that was to meet my new agent in the US and to meet some of the team that I'd worked with for ages but had never met in the flesh. So,
wow,
and it was really cool. And I love New York. I could live in New York. It's so cool.
Oh, we'd be happy to have you.
Yeah,
I say on behalf of the city.
I felt a bit like I was on a movie set or something, walking around. Everything feels giant, and I was just looking up at everything, which is funny because I'm from London. I'm from a city, but. Yeah, it's not like New York.
Every time I go out of the city, I feel like I'm in a movie. I was just saying that to Kyle. We were in Dallas and we were going through all these not random, that doesn't sound right. We were going through these small neighborhoods and I was like, look, this is like the Wonder Years or something. It looks like a movie set. And he's like, this is actually how most people live and your life is like the movie for them. And I'm like, no.
Yeah. I loved the Wonder Years. I rewatched it. I tried to rewatch it with my kids a few years ago, but they had no interest in it whatsoever. But for me, it was this is my childhood watching that show.
Me too. No, my kids need a YouTube short for like 30 seconds. And even that's like too long.
Oh God, yeah. My 10-year-old is just, he just doesn't stop looping things all the time. I'm sure it's not good for, for his attention span. I really worry about it.
I'm sure it's not either.
And I try and limit it, but then I have to be a parent instead of YouTube radio, which is much harder. So
I know. I'm like, I wonder what he's watching today. I'm like, what is every?
Yeah, I don't want to know.
What is that? So I don't know.
I'm scared of their search history. I refuse to look at it. I don't want to know.
It's so bad. I think I have some limits on there, but I'm actually not really sure.
Yeah.
Okay, tell me about developing the characters. And first of all, where did this idea come from, aside from just being deluged by rain and feeling in a dark place yourself, perhaps?
It's a strange one, actually, because I had a bit of a crappy childhood, and the character of Patch in the book was kind of based on some of that. So when my parents divorced when I was really young, and like new people come into your life, don't they, when there's divorce? And I was probably about 10 years old, and I was in bed one night, and this guy just pulled me out of bed as my mum's partner, and we both heard my arm break. And it was really terrible. And then I didn't say anything. I told everyone it was an accident because I was worried about. I was a bit scared of him, and it was a really difficult time. And so for that night when it happened, I just lay in bed like with a broken arm, waiting for the morning so that I could get some help. And it was probably the longest night I've ever had, like ever. And I still remember it now, and I still have trouble sleeping now. And have done since that night. Like, I've had a lifetime of sleep problems. I've tried everything. And I think my subconscious doesn't let me relax when it's dark, and like when I lie down, like even though I know I'm not in any trouble now or danger or anything. And so I look at that moment in my life as kind of like a sliding doors moment, like when my life kind of diverged, because I wasn't really the same after that, and some other stuff happened. He was quite violent, and I wanted to look at that in the book. I wanted to look at what happens when you're a kid and something terrible happens in your life, kind of just takes a completely different turn. And I talked to you last time about when I was 19, I got stabbed. I was mugged and stabbed, and I think that happened because of what happened when I was 10. I think because I didn't want to feel like a victim. I think I refused to give my cell phone to this guy, and I ended up getting stabbed because I had this problem that stems from my childhood. And so I wanted to look at that in the book. And at the beginning of the book, Patch, who is the lead character, is 13, and he's walking to school, and he hears a girl scream, and she's being abducted, and he, without thinking, he steps in, and he gets stabbed and then taken in her place. And so his life, just from then on, he's held captive, meets the girl Grace, who may or may not be real, and then sets out, like, bases the rest of his life trying to find her. But everything is different for him and for everyone around him. And I used to find it quite fascinating, this idea that there might, like, if you think back over your life, there might be an alternate versions, mightn't there? If you hadn't done something, if you hadn't got up on time for a job interview or something, you could be living a different life. And it's something so, like, seemingly insignificant, or for me was significant, but I think that I possibly might have done better at school and might have gone to university, and just everything changes, and it's out of your hands. It's something that happens out of your control. And so that was the basis for this book. And it was really difficult to kind of go back there.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but worth it, I think. I've been really nervous about this book coming in for the first time, like properly been nervous about a book coming out. And I think it's because it's the best that I can do, certainly at the moment. And when you can't do any better if people don't like it, it's nerve-wracking, isn't it? You kind of put yourself out there.
I think it's going to be fine. I think people are going to love it. I think people are going to love it. I would not worry at all. Can you tell me more about this relationship? When did this partner come into your life with your mom?
I think it was completely not her fault. And they were together for maybe a year or something like that. But I just remember not being able to tell anyone, because he told me not to tell anyone, like, kind of threatened it. Like, don't say anything about it. And I remember being really worried about it afterwards.
Was it just the arm thing or all of it? Like, how many?
The arm thing, and then, like, about a couple of months later, he, like, burnt my leg with a cigarette. We were in the garden, and he said that I'd bumped into him, but I know that I hadn't. Like, I remember it clearly. I've still got a scar on my leg, and then I remember keeping that quiet, keeping myself covered, being worried that someone would find out about it, and then didn't talk to anyone about it until fairly recently. But, like, the sleep problem has been probably the biggest hangover from that. Like, it's just dictated like 30 years of my life, just not being able to sleep properly. And I've tried everything, and sleeping pills work, but they're not great long term. And you don't you don't get the same quality of sleep. And I've tried sleep therapy, and it's just, it's just like the thing that I struggle with.
Have you tried like actual therapy, like cognitive behavioral therapy, or
Off and on over my life? I've never kind of stuck with it long term. I just find it really unpleasant, like going back into it in detail. And I know that CBT probably would help. And
they have something for trauma called EMDR, something with your eyes.
Yes, I know of it. Yeah, with the eye movement thing. Yeah, that's next up on my list.
I know. I'm like, I haven't done that. Like, I wonder what that is like.
Exactly. It's supposed to be really good. I know someone that did that, and she was like terrified of flying. Mm-hmm. And then she did EMDR, and now is going on around the world trip, flying everywhere. So clearly there's something in it.
Who is the first person you told about this man, and when?
My dad, fairly recently.
Really?
Yeah. It's mad, isn't it?
Oh, that's so hard. It's so
it is, hard. But I kind of went into this book and had to make the decision. Like, I sat down with the team, like, and do I really want to do it? Do I want to talk about this stuff? But it's really hard not to. And then, because you kind of have to make something up, you have to kind of lie about it. Like, where did the book come from? I would have to fabricate something. And I think that's even harder in some ways.
Is it hard, like, that you have to just pull that out and talk about it? Like that just for a course of a podcast with me, now you're like delving back into the worst days of your life. And you're like, wait, I thought it was just a nice Thursday afternoon or whatever.
I think this is cheaper than therapy. So, so you're now my therapist. No, I think I'm okay with it. I think that the more you talk about something, the less power it has. Instead of being this thing that I'm kind of worried about and have been worried about for years, as soon as you put it out there, it's not such a big deal. And people go through way worse things. So I take some comfort in talking about it, I think, and not having to lie about it. And as well, because this terrible thing happened and it never healed properly. Like, I had problems a few years ago, went back to the hospital, and they said that it just hadn't healed properly. So I still have pain in my left wrist, and it's really annoying. But I don't have any hatred towards him or anything like that. I
have hatred towards him now. Who is this guy? Let's get it,
Yeah, no, I don't even like the person that stabbed me. I barely ever think about them. I kind of separate the two things. It's really weird. Like, I remember the trauma of it, but I don't kind of remember it being personal, if that makes sense.
That's very generous of you.
Well, I think it's just for me. I think it's harder to hold on to like a kind of hatred. I think it does you more damage in the long term. I haven't hated anyone that I can recall. I imagine it's exhausting falling out with someone, hating them or holding a grudge like long term. It probably eats you up, I would imagine.
Kind of like holding a secret for this long?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, especially with sleep, because like people have always asked me, like, why can't you sleep? What's the problem? And I've never been able to say why. But I specifically know why. And it makes sense, doesn't it? If something happens like that when you're asleep, you kind of associate, even subconsciously, sleep with being something that isn't safe to do because something bad might happen.
Gosh, now I don't think I'm going to be able to sleep tonight. You're going to give sleep problems to everybody else.
No, I think everyone's got sleep problems.
No, I know. Yeah. I'm kidding. I already have sleep problems. Can you fall asleep and you just can't stay asleep? Or can you...
I do two different things. I do a really annoying thing, which is where as I'm falling asleep, I startle awake repeatedly until I get so tired I fall asleep. And then it will be maybe 2 hours later, 3 hours later, at best 4 hours later, I'm wide awake. But I tend to do loads of writing and plotting and things in the middle of the night. So every cloud. And I'm really useful, when there's a newborn. I've got 3 kids, so I'm just awake. So I'm up anyway. I'll take the night shift.
How did it go telling your wife all of this stuff? Not that this is any of my business, and I'm completely prying, so you can tell me just to stop.
That's okay. Tough. Yeah, it was. But I think there's a kind of relief, isn't there? If you know something's bothering someone and then they finally open up about it, I think it brings peace to the other person as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
my gosh.
tough. But yeah, I feel like I'm like completely fine. And I've written a book off the back of it. And so,
Yes.
yeah. And I probably wouldn't have been able to do that.
Well, in the sliding doors, where do you think, I mean, what do you think? I think you would have been a writer no matter what. This is who you are.
I don't know. Yeah, I
Really?
don't know. I dwell on that all the time. I only started writing because of trauma after being stabbed. You know, I did writing as therapy. I wasn't academic at all. I did terribly at school. I sometimes I can't quite believe that I write books. It's a weird thing because it's quite creative, isn't it? You know, and it's like quite arty, and this just doesn't feel like me. And people always say to me, like, there's a disconnect, which I think is an insult. They say there's a disconnect between the books that I write and me in person.
That's not true.
I've had that so many times.
Really?
I just can't tell you how many times, yeah. Yeah, people say they just can't marry the two up. So I don't know how to take it, really. Probably not well. Yeah.
So when you were writing this, did you, like, what was that like emotionally, right? You're going into these scenes, but of course, fictitious characters and putting yourself in a very dark place, which is emblematic of how you felt anyway, right? So what are those, were you physically, like, I feel like sometimes when I go back to things that were upsetting to me, I sweat sometimes, or like something like physically, I feel it when I'm writing. Do you feel it? What does it feel like?
I do. Yeah, especially the basement scenes in the book, because it was very much like going back to that time, you know, like lying awake at night, being in pain, not being able to ask anyone for help. And it just feels like time stops still. And so that's what it's like for Patch in the book, but he's held down there for a long time. And so, you know, it's time does stop still for him, but it's just, I don't know, I feel like we need the light, you know, to like in the morning, you know, to wake us up and to remind us that the new day has begun and to let the old day go back. And if you don't have that, it really messes with you. But emotionally, I found those parts difficult, but then there's a whole other strand of the book, which is a love story. And, you know, there's characters that bring kind of humor to the book, and so whenever it got too hard, I don't write in order, so I'll switch around and then put everything together at the end. But if ever it got too hard, I would switch and write something else, a different part of the book, different scene.
Wow.
Yeah, so that worked. That got me through it.
And what do you want readers to take away from the book at the end?
I think the overriding message is that you know, your kind of your own story is yours to write. You know, it doesn't matter if something terrible has happened in the past or something, you're still in control. And I think that, you know, when someone goes through trauma or something bad happens, particularly when you're a kid, you feel like you have no control. And it's a horrible feeling. And so this book was partly about taking back control and just reminding myself, I think, and readers that, you know, it doesn't matter where you've come from, you know, where you're going is completely up to you to decide.
I bet you're going to help so many people. I bet you don't even know how many people you're going to help, because they're not even all going to tell you. And you're just going to have this big, no, I'm serious, not to, you know, overplay it, but I'm hoping, I mean, I think it's really going to be life-changing for people.
Well, that's very nice to hear. I hope so.
I hope so. I hope the right people find it, discover it.
Yeah, I hope so. I never have like a bigger dream for it than just entertaining people. You know, and enjoy the story, because there's a lot of books to choose from, isn't there? And so I think it's kind of a privilege when someone picks up yours and you want them to not regret it, basically. So, so that's what I'm aiming for. Yeah.
Don't try to get your money back, please. Do not return me to the store and say this is terrible. You wasted my time. Oh my gosh. Are you working on another book now?
I'm working on a book called The Timekeeper, which is it's an outright love story, and I can't give the pitch of it yet, but it's there's no crime in it for the first time ever. So I'm moving out of kind of crime and mystery for the next book.
And what inspired that?
Just an idea I had for it.
Just needed a break?
Yeah, I had this idea for it, and it was just looking at the concept of time, and we all feel like we don't have enough of it, don't we? So it was looking at that, and it's a bit kind of Time Traveler's Wife meets The Fault in Our Stars kind of mix, if I was to pitch it at the moment. But it'll probably be with you in about 10 years for the rest of this.
Great.
So, yeah.
I mean, the idea that I'm still going to be sitting at this desk in 10 years having like maybe I need to at least...
There's something comforting in that, for me at least.
Maybe I could at least like move over to that side of the room, or I don't know, something. I'm like,
Maybe.
are we making progress if we don't move? If we stay in the same place? Are we
I
getting?
really love the book that you're publishing that you sent me.
Which one?
The Undercurrent.
Oh, good. Yay,
Yeah,
you did?
it's so
Awesome.
good. It's
Yeah.
so good. She's so talented. The writing in it. Oh, really brilliant book. Really loved
Yay.
it.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah, she's an English teacher named Sarah Sawyer. And this is her first.
Yeah, she's a real talent.
Oh, that's
So well done. Well done for snapping her up.
Oh, thank you. She'll love to hear that. Wonderful. What advice do you have for aspiring authors?
I always feel fraudulent giving advice because I think I still haven't got to grips with how to do it properly. You know, the whole writing thing. I think it takes twice as long as it should. It's twice as hard as it should be. But I would say be fearless. You know, like it's just really tell the story that you want to tell, and don't worry about who it's for, or don't worry about trends or how it's going to be published or anything. Those are the last things I ever think about. I just think about, you know, character is king. If you relate to your characters, if you enjoy writing them and spending time with them, then I think other people will too.
That's great. Character is king. Oh my gosh. Well, I'm so excited for you. Congratulations. Just so excited. And thank you for sharing on such a personal level some of the darkest days of your life. And, you know, I think this sounds so hokey, but I do think the world would be a better place if we all could do that. Like, imagine if we knew the darkest things about each other. You could write this novel next, right? If there was some way that we all knew and we could see, wouldn't people be nicer to each other, don't you think?
I think so. Certainly more compassionate.
Yeah.
You know, there would be less judgment and less. People are very quick to judge, aren't they?
Yes.
And I think there would be slightly more understanding, which would be nice.
That would be nice. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for taking the time. And I hope that the roof is now solidly over your house and that at the end of this, perhaps you will find a way to get a good night's sleep.
Fingers crossed. Thank you very much.
Fingers crossed. Okay. Bye, Chris.
See ya.
Thanks for listening to Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. If you love it, please leave a review and follow us on social at Zibby Owens and at Zibby Readers.